Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Brody Welch, and if you've been a listener for any length of time, you probably know that one of my main missions in life is to help people recognize that you deserve to be at the top of your to-do list, and that when you do that, you are better able to show up for the people in your life and your job and do everything else that's important to you from a foundation of grounded, centered presence. And that self-care, the real stuff, is so key to that. I was delighted to encounter Jennifer Cronin, who is a doctor, author, speaker, and expert in lifestyle medicine who is on a similar mission. She's starting a podcast called Moms Raising Daughters, and really is trying to get moms especially to take their health, broadly interpreted, seriously as a number one priority and lead by example in order to raise the next generation of strong, ambitious, and independent daughters. So I am really excited to have Jennifer here on the show today as we talk about what does it mean to, first of all, like what are the essentials of self-care that we need to have in place? Why is it so important? And whether or not, I mean, it sounds like she would agree with me that self-care is a feminist issue and that we as women need to take special care in terms of how we are walking our talk around taking care of ourselves. So, Dr. Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brody. Thank you so much for having me. I am so thrilled really to be here with you and to be included in your community. And I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that is the core message that I am trying to share with other women. And you are, a part of that message. And together we can be even more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. That I would love to know a little bit about your personal story and how you became so passionate about this particular message. Do you yourself have daughters? Have you struggled with self-care? And in your personal life with your patients? I'm curious what went into you deciding to start this podcast.
Oh my goodness. All right. So where should I begin? I have, how long do we have, right? Because
Yeah.
it has been really kind of a life mission and evolution to do what I do now and start the podcast and really just getting this message out there. So I'm a single mom for the last 5 years of two daughters that are now 11 and 14. So we are venturing into the teenage years and everything's a different stage and a different challenge. And so I'm a busy mom. I have my own business. I'm a single mom. So, and I've been a stay-at-home mom and I've been, a working full-time mom with her own business. So I know both sides of that equation. And I just know, from growing up that all these ideas and conditioning and beliefs that I had in my head and the messages that I was hearing were telling me kind of like, you're not good enough. You're never going to live up to the expectations. And I put pressures on myself. And, you know, my health really was about looking good, staying fit, comparing myself to other girls around me, and really kind of just acting as a people pleaser. And I think that girls so often do that. And, as you grow into becoming, a wife, a mother, you're taking on these other roles. You are doing everything for everyone else. But what are you doing for yourself? We kind of lose that because that's just our nature to be this nurturer and to put our own wants and needs last. And so, I just am so aware of the fact that this is critical to your survival. I mean, I struggle every day with balancing, life and work and getting my kids to do the things that I want them to do and developing a relationship. I mean, I tell them all the time, I'm like, and, I'm like, parenting is hard. I go, I really
Yeah.
don't like being a parent. I go, I absolutely love having a relationship with them, mother and daughter. I love cultivating a relationship, getting to know them as like these little people that are growing up into their own. But I am frustrated all the time with balancing all the things that I have to do and feeling like I'm still not really living up to my own expectations and society's.
Okay, you just said a lot there in a very
I
short amount of
know.
time. Like a lot, like there's four different points I want to unpack with you from just what you just said. First of all, I can totally relate to the struggle, not only to the not good enough message and the outsourcing like wellness as something that happens that other people can see, as opposed to wellness being something that you embody from the inside out. As a woman, we're so socialized to make our appearance pleasing to men, to others, to society, to meet the impossible standard that that what 2% of us have a natural proclivity towards being the right body type, according to what the media would have us believe, and so there is this sense of I'm not even entitled to have my own experience, that like that my needs are secondary, like that. Just I think there is some innateness, like women can be wired for nurturing, but it's also very steeped in the culture the women are the support roles for the kids, for the partner, for men oftentimes, and really that can be that conditioning, and even just what it is to be a good mother can be so deeply it's such a charged word. It's something that I encountered when I became an insta parent. I married a widower 5 years ago and suddenly had an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I was just like, okay, so having to tease out what felt authentic to me about being a stepmother, being a positive female role model for something that I never wanted to necessarily embark on my own. But as you were saying, like, yeah, having a relationship with these incredible young people who were supposed to help shape in this way, it's like that there's some amazing joy in that. But mother is such a charged word, and like that a lot of times, like if I could conjure up the classical image of like what does it mean to be a good mother, self-sacrificing is like way like it's almost the first thing that comes to mind,
It
and
is.
that's so insidious, right? So anyway, so that idea of um and those early messages about not being good enough, that I'm curious, like I know where I go with that. Where did you go with that? Like
Well,
what did that what sort of decisions or way
it
of being in
really
the world
has
did it inform?
it really has driven my life path, for a very, very long time. I would constantly kind of self sabotage myself because I was getting messages that I was different. I thought differently. Who I was not acceptable. And so I had to try to mold myself into what I thought other people were wanting me to be. I mean, that was, driving my behavior through my teen years. That was driving what I went into as a college degree. It was driving every single thing. And then I felt like, wow, this doesn't, it didn't feel right to me, but I couldn't really define that. I was like, why am I just feeling so unworthy and unacceptable? And that everything I do is not working out for me. And because I felt this disconnect of like who I really was and who other people wanted me to be. And so it has been a long process, and I still deal with this, on a daily basis. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I doing the right thing? And I start second guessing myself. And, so it's been a process of really diving in deep to say, hey, where did these beliefs come from, for one thing? And are they true?
Yeah,
And
exactly. Consider the source. Who is what is the voice in my head
yes, I
saying?
mean,
Where is it coming from? And is it really valid?
exactly. And it's like, and do I really care what these other people think about me in the long run? Because this is my life.
Mhm. So what helps you stay connected to that truth?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that has helped me the most and that I actually kind of pushed back on quite a bit and just kind of denied that I actually needed to work on this kind of thing. And I was totally focused on my physical health, what I was eating and exercising and all these different things. And I'm just like, wait a second, those are only your physical health is only one component of your health. We have
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
have what I call the wellness wheelhouse. So if you are in the center, that's you. And then you have all these spokes irradiating out that make up the wheel. And if you have a spoke that is weak or that is broken, the wheel is not going to turn effectively. So, I was really good at the physical health part of it. And, as a functional medicine physician, and, that's what I deal with, the patients is kind of starting with gut health. And I love fitness and I teach fitness classes. So I was like, gosh, I really have a good grasp there that I can really help people with. But I was looking at my own life and I was like, a different component of health is your spiritual health, right? And that was the biggest area that was glaring at me, saying, you know what, you're neglecting this part of your life. And, part of that is because I grew up in a strict Catholic household. And this is not a religious, discussion here by any means, but I just thought that that was part of, the conditioning of just like, you are coming from this place of unworthiness, basically. And I kind of, said, look, I'm not religious. I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about my beliefs or anything like that. And so I didn't realize that, spirituality is different than your religious beliefs and your religious community that you belong to. And so this is what really the last 5 years, since my divorce, has really helped me reconnect to myself and take a moment to listen.
Just that your connection to yourself or to what you would consider spirit isn't something that is necessarily defined by a particular dogma or tradition.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that your spiritual health is really about, connecting to whatever higher source you may believe in, but also tuning in to your intuition, tuning into that inner voice, who you are and who that is your true higher self. If you didn't have all these expectations that you put on yourself and that you felt from society, who is that person?
I love that you asked that question because really that question of like to me that speaks to an innateness of something that we discover at the depths within ourselves that we embody and that a lot of times even just the word higher self for people like it's like I can't like I don't necessarily believe in something beyond myself or like a version of myself that is wise and that knows and that's on another plane or something like that. Like that's sometimes not language that speaks to people. They do have a sense that they do have a sense of who they might be if you were to strip away all the conditioning of who they were supposed to be. And getting back to that is like it is I think so essential and yet where we have almost no encouragement in our society because it really is just about um, we're getting so many messages about paying attention to so much noise, so much external busyness and activity in the world that slowing down enough to actually connect to that can is really often devalued, in my opinion.
It is. And you have this concept of, self acceptance and self worth. Where does that come from? It's like, I talk to patients all the time about really, it's not so much about transformation, turning into someone different. It's really about allowing yourself to show up as you.
Allowing is such a great word and because that really does give us permission to be different from day to day and moment to moment depending on what's going on in our lives and depending on who we're with that might bring out different aspects of who we are and really just that the freedom to the freedom to not judge it and to just allow it to be what it is I think there's so much ease that we have available when we can develop a self-acceptance.
It is. And it's also about, forgiving yourself when you screw up. because I, in front of my daughters, I have been like not wanting to show them that I'm struggling and that I'm having a hard time, or that I'm trying to develop my business and I'm overwhelmed with what's going on in my life. And I realized that, they're watching me anyway. And
Yeah.
when I react in a certain way, they're like, Where is this coming from?" And I'm sending a message. And so a big part of dealing with my daughters has really been about asking for forgiveness, saying I'm sorry to them, and realizing that I'm not always going to show up in a way that is appropriate. I'll get mad and I'll take my frustration out on them, or, ask them 100 million times, to do something and they're not doing it. But I will apologize to them and I will say, look, even though you needed to do this and you didn't do it, I'm sorry about the way that I came across, or that I showed my frustration and anger and took that out on you. I apologize for my behavior. And that has been huge with getting close to my daughters and really sending them a message that, hey, things aren't always going to go as planned. You're not going to always do and say the right thing, but keep that line of communication open, or really, forgive yourself.
I think that's such an important message for kids to get. And first of all, for the fact that they're clearly getting the message that you respect them as human beings. You're not just pulling a power trip and trying to get them to obey your commands, but that you're a person with feelings. You have reasons for wanting done whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. And you're giving them permission to navigate life as the flawed humans that they are, who can ask for forgiveness and who can own their mistakes. They can own when they miss the mark and know that it doesn't mean the end of a relationship, and it doesn't mean they have to be perfect or dig their heels in and be stubborn. Like, just that there's so much that you're teaching them by example there.
Well, thank you. And that's, really why I'm so passionate about this, because I'm learning too. And I think that women, don't support each other enough. We're afraid to say, "Oh, I'm not like, June Cleaver and I don't always do the right thing." But we really can lean on one another.
Really true. And really the other thing you said very early on in our conversation today, that about feeling like you don't really love parenting and that there's other things that you're wanting to do with your life, that really making that struggle transparent to your daughters is something that was like one of the first pieces of advice I got from a friend when I stepped into the step parenting role, is like, how do I not telegraph to them that I don't want to be with them, when what I really want is for them to understand that my work is really important to me, and that so therefore if I'm paying attention to work, it's not that they're not important enough. And my very wise friend Karen, who is a friend of the show, I remember her telling me like that she likes to make that struggle really transparent, and say like, yeah, I would love to hear about your day right now, and I have to get this done because it's important to me to that because work is important, and just because you're a woman doesn't mean that it's secondary. And that at the same time, being able to to validate that you want to spend time with them, and that you have the rest of the colors of your rainbow to to be vibing on as well. And anyway, I just think that's
Oh,
so important
yes,
for them to learn.
exactly, Brody. I mean, that is critical to everyone and every mother's, message. There's no book on parenting out
Yeah.
there that is like, just follow these 5 steps and you've got it all made. I am adamant about talking to my children, my 2 daughters, about career. I have struggled with this because I had to take off time during residency to be with my girls, and then I was a stay-at-home mom. But I had this component of my life that was missing, my career. And it was, getting back into that and transitioning and feeling okay with the fact that now they don't have my attention 24/7.
Did that feel selfish?
Oh, it felt terrible, and I still struggle with it because, I have to go, "Okay, give me 5 more minutes to finish what I'm working on here. I need to get this email out, and then I'll be able to give you my undivided attention."
Yeah, and how does that go over? Do they receive that well?
They do most of the time because, they've been living with me, being an entrepreneur for the last 5.5 years, and, so they've gotten used to that, and plus, I've been single that whole time as well. And so, but sometimes there is friction, of course, because they retreat to their rooms, they get on their iPads, and everybody's in separate rooms doing separate activities. And so you really have to work hard to create that connection and that quality time.
It seems like they would over that course of that 5 years that they would trust that it's not just talk, like you do actually send the email and then give them your full attention.
Well, and it's one of those things that every mom hopes, that it pays off in the long run. Like my 14-year-old daughter is a much better eater and she's into, experimenting, and her favorite foods are kale and avocado and things like that. While my 11-year-old, even though I'm, eating healthy and trying to model those things, she gags on a piece of broccoli and, she only wants to eat macaroni and cheese and things like that. And so what your hope is that by sticking to your guns, building a solid foundation and modeling it for by being the example. Moms are the cornerstone of the family in so many ways. And so it's up to us to really put ourselves first, put our health as a number one priority so that in the long run, it's going to rub off on our daughters, in so many ways, our physical health, our emotional health, spiritual health, all the practices that we do
Yeah.
that we want for our daughters, we should be doing for ourselves.
Yeah, I would definitely include sons in that mix, and that there is that yes, daughters, and that these lessons are equally important if you're raising boys. I would say.
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
curious.
I'm not discriminating, but
Yeah, no, no, I hear that. I hear that. Just make it. I'm thinking about, yeah, in my situation, it's like, yeah, none of these things are gender specific. And yet, in terms of breaking the cycle of socialization of what we have as women think we have to live up to, that's really what we're talking about having to break down. Yeah.
yes. And, we could argue that for men that,
Hmm.
they should be able to embrace their more feminine side and their emotions and all of that. But,
Yeah, they should
you
be
know,
allowed to do something other than get angry and want to have sex. It's like
yes, or just
they should be allowed to have a little bit more emotional bandwidth.
exactly, and be understanding and
Uh-huh.
communicate with their significant others and show vulnerability. So it really is, what kind of a message do we want to set? Because our sons or daughters are really little sponges. And, specifically for daughters, oh my goodness. I mean, there's so many specific things that are related to female health and development that are critical to solidify as you grow up. I have conversations all the time with my friends and other women about how, this one woman was like, I was always called cute and my twin sister was always beautiful. And that really bugged me my whole life. And it still bugs me. And she's, a 47-year-old woman. And so it's like we really have to take a step back and realize, not only what we are saying to our kids, our daughters, but what we're saying to ourselves.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that was people well, people who have been reading my blog forever might remember many, many years ago when I let my inner critic self talk kind of come to a head in front of these little witnesses, and how that was really one of the things that set me on my journey towards healing my relationship with my inner critic, because I didn't want them to take it on. I didn't want to be the critical voice in their head, and I didn't want a role model ripping myself to pieces over something little, and have them sponge that up. And so it's like it's so highly motivating.
Well, that comes back to forgiving yourself too, because you're not always going to say the right thing. You're not always going to show up appropriately.
Yeah.
And that's, where it comes back to pointing it out. I
Yeah.
think that, if you're like, hey, I messed up here. I made a mistake. I didn't like the way I handled that. That also teaches them the message. So it's not just that you can never screw up, because there's
Yeah.
no such thing as being perfect. And who wants to be perfect? Honestly, that's boring. So
Mm.
I think that really the message is about progress and getting more flow and harmony
Yeah,
and
progress, not perfection.
yes, and cultivating this relationship between mother and daughter, mother and son.
We're going to take a little break from the show right now to bring you an exclusive inside scoop as to what it's like to participate in my self-care bootcamp transformational group, Level Up Your Life. I've got Celia here with me. She's gone through the course twice now, and she is signed up for the annual ticket for next year. Celia, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. I'm very grateful to be here, Brody.
Thinking back to before the first round of Level Up that you did, what were you struggling with?
Well, I've been seeking for a while on a spiritual path. I've learned a lot over decades of various groups. But the thing that intrigued me the most when you first offered that you were putting forth this course was, do you want to have the support to do the things that you know to do? I have a pretty broad spectrum of ways I know how to take care of myself, but I wasn't always able to implement them. So I would go on spurts of great self-care and I would fall away from it. And though I am in other support groups and have been for many years, I'd never taken an online class. So I thought, well, I trust you as a guide because I've experienced so much through our one-on-one work that it absolutely intrigued me. I was faltering in many of my practices, also dealing with some physical challenges in my body temple. And I thought, well, this is right along the lines of what I want to do. I'm not trying to use the word. I want to up level some of my practices. So even the name of the course just kind of gave me a little smile. So
Do you mind sharing what physical challenges you were dealing with?
yes, I had been plagued by a bad case of plantar fasciitis and a bit of arthritis in my foot. I deal with the story around food. So I was looking to find more peace in my body temple and to nourish myself more mindfully, healthfully. Again, fits and starts of eating very well for a while and then not eating as well as I would prefer. That is always a big thing for me to find some transformation in that area.
Got it. So you had a whole big toolbox worth of tools that sometimes you were good about using and sometimes not. And
Exactly.
okay, got it. And so what happens? How did you transform?
First of all, it kind of blew my mind in both rounds that I could actually get over my technological fear and do this. And having been in in-person groups, as I'd mentioned, I found it quite wonderful to see everybody's faces and actually feel the connection. Now, I believe in the energetic connection of all of us, that we are all energetic beings. But to do an online course and see the people, and then there is, of course, the resonance of hearing other people that were struggling with the same thing I was, which I forgot to mention that I'm a tender of people. I care, give, and take care of a lot of people. So,
And that's the thing that historically trips you up, right? Is like that
yes, it is.
putting everybody else's needs before your own.
Yes, it is.
And you're in good company in this, in this
boy,
round.
is that ever the truth, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
One of our members came up with the term that this is a course that fosters exquisite self-care. And I would add the adjective radical, exquisite self-care. So that, I would say, has been one of my biggest pieces, is that it is imperative that I put the tending of my mental, spiritual, and physical household first within me before I tend to my mother, who I am her tender, or my farm, my animals, my wife, the many beautiful souls that I get to be in service to. I have got to fill my own well first. And that's the biggest takeaway I've gotten.
Awesome. That's something that I feel like it can be really hard to really get that at a cellular level, that you have the right to
Yes.
take care of yourself. And to
Yes.
me, it's like, I mean, that use the word online course, and it's like, to me, it doesn't even feel like an online course. It feels like we're
No.
all in the same energetic space, but that we are kind of like all in a living room together. We just happen to be spread across the country.
It does feel that way. And that kind of blew me away because I've been in groups for decades, and I mean, I can just like resonate with the girl over in New York City, as well as the girl across town right here. It's quite fascinating. And I will say, regarding one of the habit changes that is in the course is about mindfulness. I mean, mindfulness is the thing. And I have found incredible transformation of how I approach my meals, which is a big deal, to sit down and consciously breathe and be present. Now, I knew all about this before. I've taken other courses about that kind of stuff, but some of it has stuck. Is it a perfect path? No. But when I am present for my meal and take those conscious breaths, it nourishes my body differently energetically, and I don't seem to want as much as I had previously wanted. So that is a big piece that I want more of. That's why I'm coming back for more. I want more reminders and moving as a group forward within the habit changes to anchor that even further.
Beautiful. And what changes have you seen? I know that you've done a lot around eating and changing your
Yes.
patterning there.
Yes.
And I'm curious as to the ramifications that has had for your energy, for your pain levels, for your inflammation, and for how you feel about yourself.
Well, when I eat in alignment with what I know is best, and when I am present for my meals, I believe, and you probably will, inflammation of the mind is going to cause inflammation in my foot.
Well
When
put.
when I am de-inflamed in my mind through all of the flurry and eating haphazardly, everything feels somewhat inflamed. There seems to be that much more of the cortisol is released, a little bit of energy, the adrenals are kicked in, and I'm like fight or flight and all of that. When I am calm and present when I eat, my body just feels better. Now, have I lost all the weight I want to lose? Heck no. And it begins with this inner transformation. I truly believe, I truly know from previous experiences that to build a consistent practice of this is ultimately going to yield even more physical transformation. And my foot is feeling significantly better. The plantar fasciitis is resolved. I want more radical self-care.
I love it. I love it. And I'm so glad that you're a part of this group. 11 weeks is long enough for those habits for us to be exposed to them and to maybe make a micro shift in that direction. But that what you're describing, it's like 11 weeks isn't enough to give you a new body entirely. That the magic happens when we continue in those few degrees of course correction on the compass. We've got to keep going in that direction. And over time, that takes us into a very different location on the planet than we would have arrived at otherwise. And so it's a matter of keeping on going until you reach the goal. And a lot of times the difference between staying on course and veering off course is having support.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You use the wonderful term Kaizen, which is making the micro shifts. And that totally resonates with this other concept I read about in a fabulous book a number of years ago called Opening the Trim Tab on a Boat. When you turn a mega ship around, the first thing they do before they turn the rudder is they open trim tabs, these little tiny things that start a micro shift in the turning of the ship before they turn the big rudder. So a lot of my trim tabs are open. There's been a lot of shifting and a lot of turning of this vessel into a more consistent path to where I want to go. And I know that signing up for a year is going to help me turn that rudder.
Especially because as we start to turn, we get to a point when we're starting to see a different horizon, and it's terrifying, right?
Yes,
like that it's like an affront to the whole way that we used to be in the world. And you look out over this scary unknown, and it's really tempting to just fall back on the familiar. And this is where I feel like, in my life at least, having other people to hold me accountable for, like, no, it's okay. It feels different and it feels scary, but actually this is good. This is a new thing. This is growth.
That's true. Yeah, it is sometimes very uncomfortable to be the new and improved, empowered self, because the world has been trained by me rolling out the red carpet for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So, woo, if I pull that carpet back in, people get a little curious as to what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, you're just not open for business at that point.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Wow, a boundary. Go figure.
Yay, boundaries. So, Celia, if you could go back and tell someone in your shoes, or maybe even tell yourself before you entered this program, what would you say to someone who is feeling that call to make a change, to really bridge that gap between what they know they need to be doing and actually doing it? What would you say to help them figure out whether or not to do it?
I would say, if you're looking for a supportive group that fosters self-compassion as one of the utmost practices, so that you can realize the transformations you're looking for in your body and your mind and your spirit, with a mentor and a guide who not only has a wicked amount of knowledge, but it is applied and she intimately shares from her own personal experiences of transformation, and you want to just be loved up to transformation, then come on in, because it's working for me and I want more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Celia, and for those incredibly kind words of testimonial. I
Oh,
super
man.
appreciate it. And I hope that anybody listening for whom this is resonant, book your discovery call. Hop on in for the annual pass for 2018, because this could be your year.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what else is in the wellness wheelhouse. You mentioned that it's not just physical, you've also got spiritual. What else do you put in that, the other spokes of the wheel?
I put in there as well your mental health. So I think that that is different from spiritual. You have your emotional health. And I actually think that emotional health is probably the most important spoke in the wheel. But it's often the toughest to tackle. So if I was talking about earlier how, people usually address, and at the core fundamental root of your health is considered your physical health, what you're eating and what's your diet like, and are you moving, are you exercising? We generally start there. But if things aren't working for you in those areas, usually the biggest spoke that is deficient is your emotional health. And so addressing that is often, the hardest, and you really have to dive deep, and it takes a long time, and it's an ongoing process. But emotional health is, I think, the biggest factor in overall health. There's also financial health and sexual health as a woman. I was thinking about a lot of the work that I was doing for my own self development. And I started thinking about, gosh, I've kind of neglected the financial health aspect of my life as well, because as women, a lot of times we grow up in a household where I did, and my dad didn't want my mom to work outside of the house. He basically took care of the finances, and and I realized too I had this like scarcity mindset around making money, and I was like, here I am, I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner. I need to make money. I mean, that's my livelihood. And so I've had to develop that. So I think financial health is one of the spokes, and then the last one is, sexual health as a woman. This is specific to women, all our hormones, and our sexual relationships and our body image. So, and embracing who we are as a woman.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that a little bit more. I mean, all of those things are clearly important. I'd love to know. I'd love to know what you would consider first steps on emotional health and financial health, before we dive into sexual health.
Well, on the emotional health front, we talked about this a little bit, Brody, that it's really about self acceptance, accepting where you are at that moment, forgiving yourself,
Yeah.
and forgiving others that may have influenced the way that you're thinking up to this point.
So there's like
So
a letting go of judgments that's happening there.
there is, and and I kind of, and I'm sure you talk about this with your community a lot as well. It's just taking a step back. We live in such a busy, on 24/7 environment that really just taking a step back and breathing.
Yeah, time and space. We need that in order for life to not feel totally overwhelming. How about financial health? If someone feels like they need to pay attention to that spoke, is there a first step or a place to start that you typically recommend?
There is too, and it's about awareness. So saying, you know what, I think I need to look at my financial health. I think there's more here. And so the first thing that I recommend that people do is journaling around, what is their money story? And by this, I am talking about, what are your beliefs about money? Do you believe that men are the ones that should be making the money for the household? Do you believe that it's hard to make money? Do you believe that your money is going to run out if you don't budget carefully enough? So I think it's writing down, thinking about all these different things that are influencing maybe what's going on in your life, because then you can dissect it.
Yeah, I love that. So awareness is the first step. You can't change what you don't know is there. And so like really shining the light of awareness on that, what's running in the background around money. And do you have a step as to like how someone can get over a money block that they don't really believe?
The best way to go about doing that is, number one, I think journaling is great. I like just journaling, writing down what I call like a stream of consciousness. Say, you
Hmm.
know, I believe that money doesn't grow on trees. Well, just start writing about that. And you'll be amazed at really what it reveals to you if you just let your mind just flow and not edit yourself. And then basically, so if you're like, well, you know, this came from something that my mom said to me many years ago, that, we can't spend money on that. What do you think? Money grows on trees, and it's like, how has that influenced my behavior around money today? And then, there are so many things that you can do. You can either, read a book. Barbara Stanny is a person I love that does a lot of work around financial health and really that interconnection, that spiritual kind of, connecting your higher self and your beliefs and everything to your money story. So you can start with books. You can start with reading the financial news, having a discussion. I think probably one of the biggest things is that if you are married, that there's not a lot of discussion sometimes around money, how you're spending money, your money habits. You may have a spouse, that loves to spend money and you like to save money. So just opening up the conversation. And I was talking to my sister about this and I was like, hey, I'm not married now, but I was like, why don't you guys just schedule a time, a meeting to actually sit down one on one and say, hey, for 20 minutes, we are going to discuss this big purchase that we're thinking about, and making it more of an appointment. So it's not like, you're on your way to the soccer game, you're in the car, everybody's stressed out, and you're like, you know what? It's really making me mad, or it's irritating me that the fact that you're spending all this money and you made that purchase without even consulting me. And so, it's a time and a place. So actually making it a priority and saying, hey, this is important that we actually address this, and scheduling it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of having conscious conversations that have their own dedicated window, that aren't trying to be wedged in on top of daily life, that often goes over far better, I think, for anything of importance. Let's move on to sexual health, because you alluded to a lot of things. Like, I mean, I would put into that category like everything you mentioned, from sexuality and feeling like you are entitled to your own pleasure and having a body, to protecting yourself against environmental toxins that are going to screw with your estrogen and your thyroid and like all of that. What do you consider to be important teachings about sexual health for your daughters?
Well, as they are definitely starting into puberty, stages, it's become critically aware, and, that they are at this point where they're transitioning into womanhood, and they are thinking differently. They're self conscious about their bodies. Their bodies are changing, and, they're getting their periods and dealing with all of these issues. And, women, I think it doesn't start early enough when we start considering like what we're eating and our conversation that's going in on inside of our head, is about our who we are as women, how we think about the opposite sex, what our hormones are doing. And so, as moms, I think it's super important to have that conversation with your daughter and just say, hey, these are the things that I think you might be worried about, concerned about. And here's where I am on that topic too. And I want you to be able to talk to me about these other things that come up. And, so it starts with kind of educating yourself about, hey, this is what makes me a woman. These are the things that we're dealing with. And then taking each one. So, your hormones, gosh, they're so complicated. And, and that's a huge discussion about, patients that come to me and they're like, oh, my hormones are just out of control. And, how does that happen? But, it starts really early on. And so, really setting the stage for good hormone production. And, that goes back to your nutrition, your gut health, and and then all the facets of the wheel come into play too, your emotional health, your what are your beliefs about your body, and how does that translate as you get older, and are you talking about that in front of your girls, like, oh, I'm so fat, I need to go on a diet, so there's all those type things. And then it's, having the conversation with your daughters, about sex 101. My parents never talked to me about sex. If it was like, if they didn't talk about it, it didn't exist. And so I
Yeah.
think that's, super, super important to not make that a taboo subject. I mean, women are capable and should have pleasure around sex and love their bodies and enjoy intercourse, and all of those things. And I think that a lot of time there's a lot of shame around that.
Oh, and so many, so like just yes, like women are, and girls especially are, I think, it's socialized to be the givers sexually as well, and not necessarily feel like their own pleasure is important, and to be using sexual relationships and connection for validation, for low self esteem, as opposed to from a place of empowered choice. And that's and what you were saying earlier about just the negative messages that we might be broadcasting about body image, or it just and and even just like demonizing the menstrual cycle itself, or like that, or like hormones as these like pesky things that we need to manage, as opposed to really like getting in touch, like an opportunity to really understand yourself from the inside out in a new way. And that, like that you might want to vary the kinds of activities that you do in your life based on where you are in your cycle. That just because you're irritable perhaps before a period, that doesn't mean that your feeling isn't valid in the first place. Like, just there's so many ways that that I feel like so many opportunities to counter a prevailing cultural message, that yeah, the early teen years are fraught with that stuff.
You're so right. And what having daughters has really made apparent to me is that, what are my own beliefs, what were my beliefs as I was growing up, and how do I want to talk to them about the different things that weren't discussed in my family or that were discussed. What are the good things that I want to pass on? What are the bad things? And it really makes you look at the way that you're living your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. The one thing I'd toss in there too is just about sexuality in general. That in our household, we made it really clear that we expected both kids to come out to us, whether as straight, as bi, as gay, as questioning, as that as trans, or as anything. But basically, we didn't want to assume that that there was a normal for them to fall into. We wanted them to understand that sexuality is a spectrum upon which we all fall at different points and at different times in our lives, and to really make it very explicit that that wherever they show up, that to share that with us and that know that they'll be supported, because we weren't going to assume that the default is straight and cis.
I think that's so well said, Brody. And, and you inherited your children basically from your marriage, but yet you bring this awareness, that you have developed yourself. You bring this awareness and you bring such a gift to parenting. And I think that's what moms forget about too, is that the more that we can learn and develop our own selves, we have so much more to give back to our daughters. And so, it sounds like I could take a lot of advice, from you. And I think that's the important thing too, is that all moms have a different perspective and bring to the table things that we can use, and we should support one another.
Oh yeah, totally. We all have wisdom, often hard won, and can share that with each other. And it sounds like your podcast would be an excellent place for such wisdom to be shared. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I do. I'm so excited. The podcast, it's called Raising Health.
Yeah, sorry, Moms Raising Daughters, that was your book, right? Or is that
Well,
yeah.
well, that is kind of the subtitle,
Okay, got it.
because it's Raising Health, and it's about moms raising daughters. So that's where that comes from. That's kind of the
Mhm.
subtitle. So specifically, it's this whole concept that we've been talking about, is that, women have such an influence on other women, and whether or not you are a mom, you are a daughter if you're a woman, and everybody has a mom. So it's really about bringing different topics covering all of women's health. So the podcast is going to have a lot of women's health experts on there talking about all of the topics under the wellness wheelhouse, and also myself covering some topics in there that I think that will be helpful. But it's really about giving moms actionable steps and effective solutions, because I know how busy they are, and they really just want to know, like, hey, what can I do about this one particular aspect, or about everything? And then you pick what resonates with you, but you actually get steps to start moving in that direction, to start shoring up that different spoke.
Sounds like an excellent resource. Dr. Jen, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience today, or any last words of wisdom you'd like to leave people with?
I just want to say, to moms, like, you are doing a fantastic job. It's like, I know how hard you're working. I know how much you love your kids. And what I really want to say to you is just that you are worth that same time and attention. And putting your health as a number one priority is not selfish. In fact, it's selfless. And it's really, you're going to have so much more to give yourself and your entire family.
So well put. If anyone needs a reminder of that, they can go to brodywelch.com and download your Right to Take Care of Yourself manifesto for free at the top of the website. And where can they connect with you?
You can connect with me. I will give you the link, Brody, for the podcast. I would love it if you guys would check it out and let me know your thoughts and any other topics that you would like to hear from. And my website is drjencronin.com. That's DRJEN Cronin, CRONIN.com. And I'm on all the social media too, so you can connect with me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us here at A Healthy Curiosity.
I really enjoyed this, Brody. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.